outstanding debts. This revelation explained the attempted debt collection. He probed whether the intention was a forceful takeover of the gym. However, the man countered that their goal was to purchase the coach's gym. Steph sought his uncle's guidance on how to proceed. He, in turn, deferred to the protagonist's desired course of action. Back at school, the teacher announced Victor's absence. She inquired if anyone knew his whereabouts. Suspicions arose that Seth had harmed him. The previous day, Sophie glanced back nervously. The teacher dismissed Victor's absence and commenced the lesson regardless. Hours elapsed, and Victor remained missing from class. Without warning, Victor appeared in the doorway and approached Seth, engaging him in a hushed conversation. The two exited, leaving a deeply concerned Sophie behind. Outside, beside the school building, Victor confronted Seth, holding an envelope. He presented it to Seth, demanding an explanation of its contents. Victor revealed he'd received it the previous day. He stated that his and his father's debt had been repaid, with interest added. A bewildered Seth questioned his meaning. Frustrated, Victor pointedly asked if Seth was responsible. Seth calmly countered, inquiring what the issue would be if he were. Taken aback by the response, Victor ordered Seth to stay out of his family's affairs. Seth challenged him, asking if this was how he protected his pride. The remark further infuriated Victor, prompting him to grab Seth's collar. Unfazed, Seth told him to return the money if he didn't want the assistance. Victor explained that the debt collectors had vanished and demanded to know what Seth had done to them. Breaking free, Seth advised Victor to concentrate on his boxing training. He further invoked the pledge Victor made to his father to achieve world championship status. Victor recoiled, realizing Seth's awareness of this promise. Seth issued a challenge, asserting he could demand a fight at any moment. As Seth departed, Victor could only observe his retreat, the encounter leaving him visibly unsettled back in the classroom. Sophie gazed at the doorway, anticipating her sweetheart's return. His arrival, however, startled her. "What were you doing?" he inquired. She hastily fabricated an excuse, claiming she suspected he'd gone off to fight again. Seth playfully teased, "Were you worried about me?" Blushing, she launched into a class representative-like speech, declaring her sense of responsibility for them. With that, Seth announced his willingness to fight the boys from their class, observing that she hadn't changed a bit. Sophie expressed confusion. He clarified, explaining her enduring kindness and unwavering concern for everyone. As he departs, Sophie observes his retreat while a hidden figure watches them both from a distance. Irritated by Seth's familiarity, the council president remarks he should learn his place in a traditional Japanese house. Derek sits patiently in a desolate room. A man, his kimono loosely draped, revealing a tapestry of tattoos, requests entry. Within the adjacent chamber sits the head of the Suntu Onikai gang, Maduki. Upon entering, Derek lowers his head in a deep bow, expressing his remorse to the leader. Maduki simply states his profound disappointment in his subordinate. Derek apologizes profusely, pleading for another opportunity to redeem himself and complete his assignment. He argues that since the heir's identity remains unverified, they could seize control of Sunshine with the gang's assistance. Suddenly, Rishin shatters his pipe, smashing it against the floor with tremendous force. Rishin exclaims in approval, having heard of the heir's youth. He muses that despite the heir's young age, he was still the heir and needed to proceed with greater caution. He then explained that they should try to identify the heir's vulnerability. Since he wasn't yet an adult, he must have a weakness. Derek's mind began to replay moments he'd witnessed between Seth and his mother after his father's passing. He believed he had pinpointed a potential weakness, but the gang leader interjected, emphasizing the need for a calm and calculated approach. Failure was not an option this time. A group of boys, led by a still recovering Gabe, suddenly barged into the protagonist's room. Gabe, still on the mend, immediately bellowed at everyone, demanding to know the newcomer's identity. Seth introduced himself. Gabe glared at him, angrily questioning if he was the one who had defeated Brock. He then ordered Seth out of the room. But this time, Seth stood his ground, retorting whether they thought he was a dog, to come running at their beck and call. This infuriated Gabe. Just then Victor arrived, commanding Gabe to move aside. Recognizing Victor, the other boys exchanged worried glances. Gabe, however, flew into a rage. Suddenly, Sam bursts into the room, ordering everyone to leave the new kid alone. He then casually mentions he's planning to join the judo club, leaving everyone utterly bewildered. The two begin to bicker, as Seth continues to watch the unfolding drama with growing confusion. Just then, another student appears at the doorway, assuming they have visitors. He glances down the hallway and spots a cluster of people approaching. It's the leader of the Moon Club, Damian-cha. He immediately berates the student at the door for being there. The student turns out to be the head of the Kennel Club, Scott Choi, who has also brought a posse of students with him. Amidst the chaos, Seth nervously adjusts his hair, his eyes questioning what on earth is going on. Witnessing the escalating situation, Sophie demands everyone's attention. She declares that their presence is making the entire class uncomfortable. Each person offers a hasty explanation for their arrival, but Sophie promptly kicks them all out of the room. After shutting the door, she turned to Seth, suggesting he could finally relax. However, she'd overlooked the main entrance where the others were attempting to re-enter. Ignoring Sophie completely, everyone swarmed Seth again, urging him to join their sports clubs. While Seth pondered how to handle the situation, Sophie frantically tried to evict them from the room. Just then, the physical education teacher arrived, scolding everyone after a moment of stunned silence. The teacher claimed to understand what had transpired and instructed everyone to return to their own rooms. Figuring they wouldn't accomplish much else, everyone filed out of the room. As he left, Gabe threatened to return later for a conversation. The teacher summoned Seth to the counseling room. However, even in the counseling room, Seth remained bewildered. The teacher suddenly recalled the school's athletic focus and attempted to persuade Seth to join a sports club. Seth was perplexed by the proposition until the teacher remembered Brock. He explained that Brock, during his freshman year, was just like Seth, highly sought after by every club and team. That is, until he got involved in that brawl. Our protagonist understood the teacher's implication. He was trying to prevent Seth from stirring up trouble. I appreciate the concern, Seth replied, but I'm already quite busy. He added that he didn't have the time to commit to sports. The teacher, clearly irritated, questioned how a first-year student could possibly be so occupied. He assumed Seth was merely joking. I'm more involved than I appear, Seth countered. He pointed out that the students being scouted should be the ones present, not him. The teacher was left speechless. Seth then requested that the teacher tell the other students to leave him alone. I don't run from fights, he firmly stated. Meanwhile, Jason eavesdropped from behind the door, later grumbling about Seth's arrogance. Jason then made his way to a deserted building on campus, where a group of boys had congregated to smoke. A boy is awestruck by the student council president's presence. He inquires about the president's purpose. The president responds that he requires their assistance in eliminating someone. As the day concludes, Seth departs from school, heading towards his vehicle. While traversing a narrow passageway, an individual materializes from behind, wielding a wooden plank and striking him. After a period of time, Seth gradually regains consciousness. He finds himself before the person Jason had been conversing with. The boy grins and initiates a conversation, while Seth, with his injured head, gazes at him. As he struggles to his feet, the boy with the wooden plank delivers a blow to his back. Then, Seth fixes him with a stern glare, his annoyance with the protagonist evident. Look, one of the boys from the classroom remarks. He appears remarkably frail for someone who vanquished Brock. Another boy cautions him against being disrespectful. Rising to his feet, Seth declares, this is a rather intriguing predicament, as she attempted to meet his gaze once more. He retorted that she was the class representative, after all, a statement which clearly irked her. He offered his assistance, prompting her with, remember when we were kids? He affirmed with a knowing, I did. Seth reminisced about their days at spring daycare, recalling how they were the thickest of friends. A faint smile graced the representative's lips as Seth continued, describing their countless hours of play at his house. Her smile broadened as they journeyed down memory lane, from climbing trees to the time she planted a kiss on his cheek. He reassured her, you don't need to fret, because I wouldn't breathe a word about your kiss, pointing to the spot on his face. Seth rationalized it as childish behavior, but his words visibly deflated her. He inquired, did you wait all this time just to ask about that? Just then, the student council members began to disperse, prompting her to grumble. She retorted, and who said I was waiting for you? She then followed the president and departed with the council members, leaving Seth alone with the other speaker. The protagonist mused that they got along rather well, and simply smiled as he headed in the opposite direction. A childhood memory surfaced in his mind. Our protagonist continued on his path, a smile gracing his lips. His smile faltered when he noticed his ride was once again stationary. He found his driver asleep yet again and began to enter the vehicle. He was greeted by the still slumbering driver. Exasperated, he questioned why the driver was always so on edge. The driver jolted awake, stammering apologies once more. He inquired if Seth wished to stop by his mother's restaurant for a visit. Seth declined, requesting to be taken directly to the company. Upon arriving at the Sunshine Group building and entering the president's office, he exhibited clear tedium with the paperwork. He listlessly shuffled through the documents, inquiring what he needed to know about these particular matters. His uncle admonished him to adopt a more professional demeanor while at work. The two locked eyes in a silent standoff. The protagonist questions the necessity of this, given that his presidency hasn't officially commenced. However, his uncle reminds him that the Sunshine Group is his father's legacy, and as the sole heir, its inheritance is his birthright. Our protagonist protests, claiming his youth, a mere 17, and inexperience in such matters. This elicits irritation from his uncle, who retorts that Sunshine is no ordinary enterprise. He reveals Sunshine's origins within the criminal underworld, stemming from what society deems gangs. Their legitimacy, he explains, is a mere facade. The company, he continues, is involved in a multitude of illicit operations that thrive in the shadows of society. His uncle attempts to pacify him, acknowledging the 2 years remaining before his official takeover. He concedes that there are still 2 years before he officially assumes control of the enterprise. But he emphasizes that this is irrelevant. His lineage as the boss's son guarantees his position, a fact universally acknowledged by the executives. All the high-ranking officials have already embraced him as their future leader. Our protagonist sighs, his contemplation interrupted by an incoming call. Uncle then answers the incoming call. A voice on the other end announces the arrival of the Busan contingent. The line abruptly goes dead. His irritation grows until a door bursts open, and the uncle demands to know what's going on. At that very moment, the head of the Busan group, Derek Paik, strides in, questioning his unwelcome reception. The uncle accuses him of betrayal, to which Derek responds with fury. He refuses to accept Seth's authority, dismissing him as a mere boy. Derek's insolence infuriates the uncle, who has to be restrained by Seth. Seth intervenes in the heated exchange. Our protagonist fixes his gaze on Derek and inquires about the state of his nose. Derek mutters about being careless last time. Seth proposes a rematch. This invigorates our protagonist, who declares it the perfect opportunity, given his foul mood. He lunges at Derek. Derek is caught off guard as the protagonist closes in. Then, a crushing sound echoes. The following day, back at school, Seth bids the driver farewell, while Jason observes his arrival. Their eyes lock. Seth enters the gate, their gazes fixed on Brock, maintaining a vigilant watch. Meanwhile, Brock commands his brother to bring the protagonist to him by any method necessary. Jason spots him in the distance, observing the entrance. In the council room, the president outlines the situation, urging them to avoid any confrontations with Brock. Dave bristles at this, demanding to know who Brock thinks he is and why they should tread carefully around him. Sam clarifies that as a national representative, Brock is someone they shouldn't provoke. This only fuels Gabe's anger, as he blames Brock for the school's current predicament. The president intervenes, ending the debate, declaring that their hands are tied. This statement sends Gabe over the edge, recalling their shared past at the academy. It was a renowned athletic institution, now in ruins, all because of him. Everyone silently acknowledged the painful truth, though powerless to change the past. Gabe, consumed by rage, violently kicked a chair, vowing to reclaim everything Brock had stolen, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Goblin ventured into Seth's room, finding him sound asleep once more. With utmost care, he gently roused him, beckoning him for a private conversation outside. Seth mumbled sleepily, but Goblin stressed the urgency, persuading Seth to accompany him. Our protagonist inquired if they should step outside, and Goblin affirmed. Victor observed their departure, his gaze following them, as they disappeared down the hallway. Back in the schoolyard, Sophie anxiously pondered the unfolding events. Brock, overcome with boredom, having effortlessly defeated all of Gabe's reinforcements, tauntingly questioned if that was the extent of their strength. Gabe, infuriated, glared at him. The athlete launches a kick at Brock, who deflects it with his arm. But in that instant, Brock seizes Gabe's leg, sneering, "Hope you said your prayers." He then yanks Gabe by the leg and hurls him violently to the ground. Victorious, Brock still feels a pang of boredom as he gazes down at Gabe's unconscious form. "I'll make sure you never walk again," he threatens. However, the student council president intervenes, putting a stop to the brutal display. Brock recognizes him. Jason inquires why Brock is there, considering he has no apparent grievance with the school. Brock clarifies that he, in fact, harbors no ill will towards the institution, and simply wished to speak with the newcomer. Jason orders him to cease, causing further disruption on school grounds. Brock retorts that while nothing seems to intimidate Jason, due to his affluent background and position as council president, Brock is superior. The president stands his ground, declaring he won't allow the entire school to suffer consequences. Because of Brock, suddenly, Goblin escorts our protagonist into the room. Their eyes lock in a moment of intense scrutiny. Recognition dawns on Seth. This is Brock, the subject of countless conversations. Recalling Goblin's brother's visage, a broad grin spreads across Seth's face as he exclaims, "You haven't aged a day." But Brock, ready for a confrontation, advances towards Seth. Sensing Brock's intent, Seth's hands begin to tremble uncontrollably. His fingers curl into tight fists. He braces for a fight, but Jason swiftly intervenes, halting Brock's aggressive approach. Brock snarls a warning, "Stay out of this if you know what's good for you." However, the president stands his ground, resolute. He commands them to cease any fighting on school grounds. Brock's patience with the president finally snaps. He lunges at him, ready to attack. In that instant, Seth shoves Jason aside, demanding he move. Our protagonist assumes Brock came specifically to see him. Both Brock and the president remain impassive to Seth's presumption. Jason attempts to intimidate Seth with a threat to prevent further disruption to the school. The protagonist guarantees that he'll handle the situation, proposing they settle their dispute in the gym with its ample audience. He adds that the fighting style is Brock's choice, declaring his indifference. Brock remains impassive, fixing Seth with a stare. Seth boldly proclaims his fearlessness. Brock responds by raising a hand, as if to strike. Seth challenges him. "Do I look like someone who shrinks from a fight?" His defiant demeanor astonishes the onlookers. Then, with a sudden shift, Seth suggests a sportsmanlike duel and inquires about the gym's location. Word of the impending fight rapidly disseminates throughout the school. Rumors